The Galactic Empire liked to stage its victories the way ancient kings once did, with processions, banners, and the kind of theatrical cruelty that kept lesser species trembling. That was why the children were paraded through the golden corridors of the Imperial Citadel. 3 small humans flanked by guards in obsidian armor. The scene projected live across 100 star systems. To the Empire's rulers, this was a prize catch, an amusement, a reminder to the galaxy that humanity was nothing but a backwater species now humbled. The eldest child, 9 years old, shuffled forward with hands bound by thin restraints more ceremonial than necessary. His eyes darted not with fear, but with curiosity, catching on the alien sigils, the glowing banners, the crystalline chandeliers that hummed with anti-gravity filaments. He whispered to his sister, who was 7, "Looks like Grandma's old Christmas lights, doesn't it?" She giggled, a sound utterly alien to the solemnity the guards expected. The youngest, a 5-year-old with messy hair and a stubborn jawline, dragged his boots across the polished floor and asked in a loud, clear voice, "Do you guys have peanut butter here?" "Because I'm starving." The request echoed in the grand hall, bouncing off marble-like pillars and sending an awkward ripple through the armored escort. The commander leading the procession, a tall reptilian called Commander Zyrith, hissed in frustration, "Silence, Spawn. You are captives of the Empire." He expected tears, trembling, maybe pleas for mercy. Instead, he got a glare from a 5-year-old, who folded his small arms and muttered, "You're not the boss of me. My dad says only cowards pick on kids." A wave of laughter erupted from the watching aliens, mocking cruel laughter. But beneath it, a sliver of unease threaded through. These children did not behave like captives. They behaved like humans. The Imperial Council chamber was packed with dignitaries of every species allied to the Empire. Towering insectoids clicked their mandibles in approval. Feathered aristocrats preened and muttered, "So fragile, so soft." The predators of Earth reduced to hatchlings in our cages. Hollow drones floated overhead, broadcasting every sneer and every chuckle to the wider galaxy. A propaganda official narrated with booming pride, "Behold, the offspring of Earth, taken with ease, presented as proof that humanity is weak, laughable, and helpless before the might of the Empire." The children were herded onto a dais, their small wrists locked into radiant cuffs. The eldest boy tilted his head toward the guards and asked with perfect seriousness, "So when's recess?" The chamber exploded in laughter again, but this time some of it was nervous. The Empire's leaders liked obedience, submission, terror. They did not like unpredictability. These human children were not weeping or begging. They were acting like schoolkids on a boring field trip. One counselor, an amphibian elder with skin like tarnished silver, leaned toward his neighbor and croaked, "They don't seem frightened. Odd. Shouldn't they be crying?" His neighbor, a spindly avian with jeweled eyes, scoffed, "Humans have always been eccentric. They laugh at funerals, sing before battles, and eat creatures no other species would touch. Their behavior means nothing." But the amphibian muttered, "Or it means everything." On the dais, the 7-year-old girl squinted at the crowd and then whispered to her brothers, "I bet Dad would say this is one of those boring government meetings where no one listens." She raised her little hand as though in school and asked loudly, "Excuse me, do you guys have cartoons? Or at least a puppy?" Even the hardened guards shifted uneasily at her voice. The chamber erupted again, half in mockery, half in disbelieving shock. The children were not supposed to talk back. They were supposed to be silent symbols. Instead, they were stealing the stage. Commander Zyrith bared his fangs in irritation. He stepped forward to deliver the Empire's official message. "Let the galaxy see. Humanity's young, so easily taken. If their children can be captured, what hope have their warriors, their leaders, their fleets? The age of Earth is over." The Empire, he was cut off by the 5-year-old, who yawned loudly and said, "Boring speech. My dad tells way better bedtime stories." A ripple of gasps and scattered chuckles raced through the chamber. The propaganda drones faltered in their flight. For a moment, the Empire's performance cracked. Still, the Empire broadcast the event with triumph. Across distant worlds, Screens flickered with the image of three human children surrounded by jeering aliens. Commentators derided the myth of human resilience. One broadcast host sneered, "These are the offspring of Earth's so-called predators. Small, disobedient, and laughably unthreatening. Humanity is finished." But among the viewers, whispers spread. Those who had encountered humans in darker circumstances remembered other stories. Stories not meant for broadcast. Stories of soldiers who did not break, of diplomats who smiled while destroying empires with words, of engineers who turned scrap into weapons. Some viewers stared at the captured children and felt a chill. What if these weren't trophies, but bait? In the sterile labs beneath the citadel, scientists prodded and tested the children. They measured bone density, cataloged immune responses, scanned neural pathways. The eldest boy only complained once. "Seriously, you don't have peanut butter?" The scientists blinked in confusion at the repeated demand. "This peanut butter," one muttered. "Is it a weapon?" Another wrote a note, "Possible human nutrient paste of military significance." The 5-year-old kicked one of their instruments and declared, "This place sucks." The girl rolled her eyes at her brothers and said, "Dad always said not to touch other people's stuff. Guess they didn't listen." The scientists could not decide if the children were being insolent or simply human. Rumors spread among the guards. Some said the children's fathers were warlords. Others whispered darker tales. One father, a strategist, who had once convinced 2 warring fleets to annihilate each other while he sat safely drinking tea. Another, a soldier, who had walked unscathed from battlefields where no one else survived. Another, an engineer, who had turned a derelict station into a fortress overnight. The guards laughed nervously at the stories. Surely myths. Surely exaggerations. After all, humans were weak, weren't they? But unease grew. At night, guards reported hearing the children singing strange earth songs, their high voices echoing through the prison halls. "Baby shark do-do-do," they sang, confusing and irritating their captors. One guard muttered, "It sounds like a battle chant." Another replied, "Maybe it's a coded message." Paranoia seeped into the barracks. The more the Empire tried to laugh at the children, the more unsettled they became. In the council chamber, debates erupted. Some demanded the children be executed to snuff out the symbolic ember of human defiance. Others insisted they be raised as trophies, paraded as proof of the Empire's supremacy. The Emperor himself, a vast figure of crystalline armor and molten eyes, declared, "Keep them alive. Nothing breaks a species more than seeing its future bound in chains." His words were broadcast, but the children only shrugged. "Dad says bullies always talk too much," the eldest muttered. And then, unnoticed at first, a flicker. Deep within the prison's datanet, a pulse of information slipped past firewalls, hidden in the background noise of routine transmissions. It was a small signal, encrypted in human fashion, messy, redundant, and seemingly irrelevant. The scientists logged it as interference. The guards ignored it. But far beyond the Empire's capital, on the edge of forgotten space, the signal unfurled like a flare in the night. The children did not know. They only whispered to each other in the dark, curled together on a hard bunk. "Dad's coming," the girl said softly. "He always comes." The youngest, already half asleep, mumbled, "Betty brings peanut butter." The eldest stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, his eyes reflecting a quiet certainty. He didn't know how. He didn't know when. But he knew his father's promise. "Nobody touches my kids and gets away with it." Back in the council chamber, the Emperor smiled coldly at the jeering crowd, oblivious to the signal that had already escaped. "Let the galaxy see humanity's weakness," he proclaimed. The audience roared approval. The children sat on their dais, whispering jokes only they understood. And somewhere light years away, 3 men looked up from their work, their games, their conversations, as a signal reached them. Their children had been taken. The galaxy had just made its last mistake. The first father received the signal while pouring tea. He sat at a round table of polished obsidian on the neutral station of Aurelian Prime, surrounded by ambassadors of 3 rival species. They had been laughing politely at his stories of Earth customs, barbecues, fireworks, children running through sprinklers, assuming the genial human diplomat was harmless. The signal blinked at the corner of his slate, hidden in a pulse of data so untidy no alien algorithm would have recognized it. His hand did not tremble as he set the teapot down. His smile, warm as a hearth fire, lingered across his face as though nothing had changed. But his eyes, a shade too calm, had already shifted. He excused himself with perfect courtesy, offering a shallow bow. "My apologies, friends. I've just remembered an urgent matter. Do enjoy the tea. It pairs best with honey." The ambassadors exchanged wary glances. No one believed he had forgotten anything. The room felt colder when he left. On the rim of a barren moon thousands of light years away, the second father sat hunched over a scarred table with a group of mercenaries. Cards lay in his hands, smoke curled from a crude lamp, and the stakes were credits, weapons, and pride. The scar across his cheek caught the dim light as he shuffled, his eyes sharp and unreadable. He had been teaching the aliens poker, explaining the bluff, the tell, the art of holding nothing but winning everything. They thought it a quaint human game. When the signal bled across his comm, hidden in background static, he saw it for what it was. He tossed his cards onto the table, 2 kings, and stood. "Game's over," he said. The mercenaries laughed, thinking he meant the hand. They fell silent when they realized he wasn't smiling. Without another word, he slung his rifle across his shoulder and walked into the cold night. The air seemed to bend around him, carrying the weight of inevitability. The third father knelt beneath the belly of a broken freighter, grease smeared across his hands, hair tousled like a man too busy to care. His voice filled the hangar as he hummed a song off-key, tossing tools with absent precision. He was fixing what everyone else had called unfixable, patching wires with scrap, coaxing the reactor back to life with the easy charm of a man who laughed at impossibility. When the signal blinked into his receiver, he paused only long enough to wipe his hands on a rag. Then he grinned, a grin so wide it unsettled the onlookers who had grown used to his easy humor. "Well," he said softly, "guess it's time to pack." He slammed the panel shut, kicked the freighter's hull, and the dead ship roared awake as if it had only been sleeping. The aliens watching muttered prayers, unsure if they'd just witnessed sorcery or madness. He winked at them, eyes gleaming with something they had never seen before. Family emergency. 3 signals, 3 responses, carried across the galaxy like threads converging. The fathers were different men, bound by nothing visible. One refined, one brutal, one eccentric. But the bond that tied them was older than war, deeper than politics. Blood. Children. The kind of bond that civilizations underestimated until it was far too late. They converged on a hidden outpost nestled in the shadow of a dying star, a place forgotten by maps and dismissed as debris. To them, it was simply home. The diplomat arrived first, his ship sleek, polished, flying under false registry. He stepped down the ramp in a suit pressed, so sharp it could have been a weapon. His eyes swept the landing bay, precise and calculating, though his smile was easy. The soldier's arrival shook the bay with thunder as his gunship touched down, paint scorched, hull battered, weapons bristling. He walked with a predator's grace, every movement purposeful, his silence louder than shouts. The engineer burst in last, his freighter sputtering like a drunk coughing up smoke, then miraculously stabilizing at the last second. He climbed down the ladder laughing, wiping oil from his brow. "Still flies. Don't listen to her complaints." Together, they formed a triangle of contradictions: refinement, violence, chaos. And yet, in their eyes, the same fire burned. They greeted each other not with warmth, but with an economy of words. Old comrades did not need to speak much. The soldier gave a single nod. The diplomat returned it with the faintest curl of a smile. The engineer broke the silence. "You know, I always told them, mess with Earth, fine. Mess with our debts, maybe we argue. But mess with our kids." He slapped the railing for emphasis. "That's extinction-level stupid." None of them laughed, though the words hung in the air like prophecy. In the outpost war room, a cracked table glowed with a map of the Empire. Stars shimmered across its surface, lines of supply, fleets, and fortress worlds highlighted in ominous red. The diplomat traced a finger along one route, tapping softly. They paraded our children. That means they want us to see, to despair, to yield. His tone was calm, almost academic. The soldier leaned forward, voice gravel scraping stone. Or they want to bait us. They think we'll come charging blind. The engineer grinned, leaning back in his chair. So let's charge blind. But, blind on purpose. Nothing scarier than a human pretending to be dumb. They shared a silence thick with memory. The galaxy thought of humans as reckless, emotional, improvisational. They knew better. Humans pretended to be those things. Behind the laughter, behind the chaos, behind the courtesy, humanity planned. Reports filtered into the outpost. Empire broadcasts replaying the children's mockery, their supposed humiliation. The fathers watched in silence. The diplomat's jaw tightened, the soldiers' fists clenched, the engineer's eyes glimmered with manic light. When the youngest boy yawned through the emperor's speech, the soldier muttered, "That's my boy." The diplomat whispered, "They think this is weakness." The engineer smirked. "Yeah, they really don't know what's coming." The alien analysts stationed at the outpost had watched humans for years. Even they shifted uneasily. One, a scholar with translucent skin, ventured timidly, "The Empire believes you're kind incapable of scale warfare. They say humanity lacks numbers, lacks unity. They think you're scattered." The diplomat smiled, gentle as winter frost. "They're right." The soldier leaned back, his voice low. "We don't need unity. We only need motive." The engineer added, "And they just handed us the biggest one in the universe." They began to plan. The diplomat spoke of leverage points. Supply chains stretched thin, governors who could be swayed, factions within the empire already suspicious of each other. The soldier outlined tactics, strikes so surgical they looked like chaos, but bled enemies dry. The engineer filled the gaps with lunacy disguised as genius, turning abandoned satellites into mines, hacking food replicators to spit out nonsense, broadcasting human lullabies on military frequencies. The more absurd the idea, the more dangerous it became. Together, they wove a tapestry of inevitability, every thread leading toward collapse. It was not where they designed. It was a funeral. As the hours passed, the mood shifted. The diplomat's charm sharpened to steel. The soldier's silence turned heavier, an anchor in the storm. The engineer's laughter grew brittle, carrying an edge of fire. They were not just fathers anymore. They were predators who had been forced to remember why humanity survived. And as they spoke, as they planned, the outpost itself seemed to lean closer, as if even the stars knew history was bending. By the time the last detail was set, none of them needed to say the obvious. The Empire had crossed a line. There would be no treaties, no negotiations, no second chances. Only an answer carved into the bones of galaxies. The diplomat finally broke the silence, his voice smooth but glacial. "We will retrieve our children, but we will not stop there. We will show them what happens when you touch what is ours." The soldier stood, adjusting the strap of his rifle, and said simply, "Extinction." The engineer grinned, teeth flashing, and clapped his hands. "Then let's give them a show." Beyond the outpost walls, the dead star flickered one last time before collapsing into shadow. The galaxy spun on, unaware that three men had just decided its future. And far away, in the heart of the Empire, three children whispered to each other in the dark, still certain their fathers were coming. They were right. The fathers were already on their way, carrying not just rescue, but reckoning. The citadel of the Empire glittered under artificial suns, an edifice of arrogance, so vast it cast shadows across 3 continents. Inside its core, the children remained confined in crystalline cells designed to contain beasts 10 times their size. They had already scrawled crude drawings in condensation on the walls, played games with pebbles stolen from the guards' boots, and turned the silence into an echoing chorus of nonsense songs. The guards watched with growing unease. Children were supposed to break. These did not. They laughed, whispered, and, worst of all, waited. Above them, the council convened to prepare for what they called the inevitable human tantrum. Intelligence reports suggested that 3 ships had left hidden outposts and were heading toward Imperial territory. The council roared with derision. 3 ships against 10,000, scoffed an avian noble, feathers rustling like banners. This is not war, it is comedy. Yet the old amphibian counselor, who had doubted before, now shifted nervously. Humans rarely arrive without purpose, he croaked. His warning was dismissed as paranoia. The 3 fathers entered Imperial space, not with fanfare, but with silence. Their ships ghosted across borders, massed in clutter, disguised as debris. The diplomat traveled ahead, his vessel transmitting fragments of chatter that resembled bureaucratic updates. To Imperial scanners, it looked like nothing. The soldier cut through outer defenses with precision strikes, so fast they registered as malfunctions. Stations reported sudden power losses, fleets lost communications, commanders barked orders into void channels. The engineer hacked into supply manifests, rerouting convoys to non-existent depots. Entire battalions ended up waiting for shipments that never arrived, cursing into the empty dark. The Empire thought it faced 3 intruders. In reality, it faced 3 fronts of a single storm, and the storm carried laughter at its edges. Across military frequencies, alien crews heard strange music, the twang of guitars, the rise of fiddles, voices singing of lost loves and wide roads. To humans, country music was ordinary. To aliens, it was incomprehensible and terrifying. "Is this a code?" demanded a commander. "Are they chanting before battle?" The crew whispered in fear as a ballad about trucks and heartbreak filled the bridge. Panic spread faster than facts. One fleet commander, convinced the humans had unleashed a mind weapon, ordered a retreat. Another accused him of treachery, and their ships exchanged fire before realizing no humans were present. The diplomat's voice slipped across channels, calm and courteous. "Dear Council, I urge restraint. After all, misunderstandings lead to tragedy." To Imperial ears, the words dripped politeness. To those who knew human cadence, the threat was clear. Tragedy was already scheduled. Meanwhile, the children staged their own rebellion. Using a spoon smuggled for mealtime, the eldest boy loosened a vent grate. The youngest crawled through, small enough to wriggle into maintenance shafts. The girl whispered encouragement, her eyes shining with mischief. When guards discovered the missing spoon, they panicked as though it were a weapon of mass destruction. Rumors spread that the human children could escape any prison, that they carried secrets in their blood. The more the guards tried to control them, the more the children slipped through cracks, sowing chaos with nothing but stubbornness. The fathers drew closer. The soldier docked at a forward outpost disguised as a supply barge. He walked among unsuspecting officers, silent as winter, then dismantled the command center in less than 3 minutes. His rifle spat precise bursts. His hands moved with brutal certainty, and when it was done, he whispered into the comm, "Proceed." The diplomat entered the citadel through official channels, escorted by guards who believed him to be a minor envoy. He thanked them with perfect courtesy, memorizing every corridor, every door, every hesitation in their steps. The engineer arrived last, piloting his patched freighter straight through a blockade by convincing half the fleet their scanners were malfunctioning. "Don't worry," his voice crackled cheerfully. "Just a glitch. Happens all the time. You should reboot." By the time they realized, he was already inside. The council finally understood they were not facing intruders. They were facing infiltrators who had already unraveled their defenses. Reports poured in of food replicators producing peanut butter instead of rations, military databases filled with knock-knock jokes, entire stations playing the same childish refrain, "Baby Shark, do-do-do." What the aliens dismissed as nonsense became unbearable torment, breaking discipline, sowing madness. One general slammed his claws on the table. "They mock us while they strike. These are not soldiers, they are tricksters." The amphibian counselor whispered, "That is worse." In the prison below, the children listened as alarms echoed through the citadel. The eldest boy smirked. "Told you. They're here." The girl gripped the bars, heart pounding. The youngest yawned and muttered, "Hope Dad brought peanut butter." The soldier reached the prison first. He cut through guards like a shadow, his movements economical, his breathing steady. He found the children huddled together, eyes wide, and his composure cracked for the first time. He knelt, arms open, and they ran into him, their small bodies trembling but alive. "We came," he whispered, voice rough. "We always come." The diplomat arrived moments later, smoothing his sleeves, as though he'd stepped out of a meeting. He crouched, brushing a strand of hair from his daughter's face. "Did you behave?" he asked softly. She grinned, mischievous. No, his smile deepened. "Good." The engineer burst in last, panting, grease still smeared across his jaw. "Miss me, monsters," he cried, sweeping the youngest into his arms. The boy nodded solemnly. "You brought peanut butter?" The engineer winked. "Better. I brought chaos." Together, the fathers gathered their children. But the citadel was not silent. Sirens blared, troops mobilized. Commanders screamed into channels already filled with human laughter. The trap had been sprung, and the Empire scrambled without realizing the game was already lost. The diplomat tapped into the council's private feed, his voice polite, calm, deadly. "Esteemed rulers of the Empire, allow me to thank you. Your hospitality has been memorable. But we will be leaving now with what is ours." The council erupted in outrage, spitting threats, demanding surrender. The diplomat only smiled faintly, eyes colder than the void. "Do not mistake restraint for weakness. Today, we take back our children. Tomorrow, we may not be so merciful." The soldier led them through collapsing corridors, his rifle clearing every path. The engineer hacked doors, triggered malfunctions, turned defenses against their owners. Drones exploded in showers of sparks, lights flickered, walls trembled. To the Empire it looked like invasion. To the fathers it was simple retrieval. Yet the cost to the Empire was catastrophic. By the time they reached the hangar, chaos reigned across the capital. Fleets fired on each other, convinced they faced human deception. Governors cut off communications, terrified of sabotage. Ordinary citizens whispered that the Empire had angered something ancient, something unstoppable. The three fathers boarded their ships with their children, the hangar collapsing behind them. As they lifted into the black, the children huddled close. The girl whispered, "They're scared of you." The diplomat looked out at the burning capital. "They should be." The youngest clutched the jar of peanut butter the engineer had conjured from a hacked replicator and smiled. Best rescue ever. But outside, the real war was only beginning. The Empire still had fleets, armies, worlds. The trap had been sprung, but the jaws had yet to close. The three fathers exchanged a glance across comms, unspoken words passing between them. This was not rescue alone. This was declaration. And in the council chamber, amid the smoke and confusion, the amphibian counselor whispered the words none wanted to hear. "This is not their full strength. This is only the beginning." The Empire had been wounded before, but never humiliated. Now the humiliation burned hotter than any wound, searing pride into paranoia. Fleets massed in orbit around the capital, ships blotting out stars, commanders barking orders to strike at once. Yet beneath the thunder of engines, fear crept like smoke. Three humans had entered their citadel, taken their children, and left the greatest fortress in the galaxy in shambles. If three could do that, what might an army accomplish? The question spread like infection, and no order from the Emperor could cure it. The three fathers sat with their children aboard the diplomat ship, silent for a moment as stars streaked past. The children dozed against their father's shoulders, exhaustion softening their small frames. For the fathers, silence was never emptiness. It was calculation. The soldier polished his rifle with steady hands, though his eyes stayed on the stars. The engineer fiddled with a small device, turning scraps of wire into something humming and alive. The diplomat sipped tea, as if nothing about the universe had shifted. Yet all three radiated the same truth. Retrieval was only the first act. Now came judgment. Messages from the Empire flooded the channels, threats, denials, desperate appeals. One broadcast declared the children still prisoners. Another insisted the humans had fabricated their escape. Lies stumbled over each other in frantic succession. The diplomat listened politely, his eyes glinting with quiet contempt. They think this is about reputation, he murmured. The soldier replied low and cold, it's about extinction. The engineer grinned, teeth flashing, and tossed the humming device from hand to hand. Let's show them a magic trick. The trap had been seeded long before. Months ago, years even, while the empire mocked humanity as provincial and scattered, human hands had been planting. A line of code hidden in shipping manifests. A virus wrapped inside a trade agreement. A fragment of Earth nursery rhyme embedded in the frequencies of supply drones. Harmless, they said. Chaotic. Beneath notice. And now, at a signal carried in a child's whisper, those fragments awoke. Lights across the empire flickered. Replicators produced only jars of peanut butter. Warships refused to fire, broadcasting baseball scores instead of targeting coordinates. Banking networks collapsed, every account replaced with knock-knock jokes. The more the commanders shouted, the deeper the absurdity spread. Panic sharpened into terror. They've infected us, one admiral cried. They've turned our strength into parity. Another shouted back, not parity, strategy. The three fathers advanced not with fleets, but with inevitability. The soldier led precision strikes, dismantling defenses so surgically it felt like fate. Stations imploded one by one, not in grand explosions, but in quiet collapses that spread fear faster than fire. The engineer bent physics with laughter, building weapons from refuse, turning navigation buoys into mines, hacking gravity wells to toss fleets like toys. He chuckled at each success, though his eyes burned with fury. And the diplomat, he moved like a shadow across comms and councils, speaking softly, promising peace while sealing doom. We have no quarrel with you, he told governors. Lay down arms, and you live. Many did. More than the empire imagined. Fear made them pliable. Humanity made them loyal. In the citadel, the emperor convened his generals, a spectacle of molten eyes and crystalline armor. They are 3 men no more, he roared. We are millions. We will drown them. Yet even as he spoke, holoscreens behind him flickered with chaos. Fleets were firing on each other. Convinced humans had infiltrated their command codes. Governors declared independence, fearing human retribution more than imperial wrath. Citizens whispered of the boogeymen of Earth, the predators who smiled as they hunted. The emperor slammed his fist, shattering the table. I will not bow to vermin. But his generals avoided his gaze, because deep down they had already bowed. The final march began with no drums, no banners. The three fathers walked into the throne hall as if arriving at a dinner invitation. The diplomat straightened his cuffs, the soldier carried his rifle loose at his side, the engineer twirled a wrench between his fingers. Guards rushed forward, but the soldier dispatched them with brutal efficiency. Movements so precise they looked rehearsed. The engineer flipped a device that turned the hall's lights into a storm of sparks, blinding their enemies. The diplomat walked calmly through the chaos, every step measured. They stopped before the emperor. Silence fell like a guillotine. The children watched from the balcony above, wide-eyed, clutching each other. The emperor rose, towering, voice thunder. You dare defy the empire? The diplomat's smile was faint, his voice silk. We do not defy. We conclude. The emperor spat curses, threats, promises of annihilation. The soldier raised his rifle, then lowered it, voice steady. You've already annihilated yourselves. We're just here to tell you. The engineer tossed the wrench, caught it again, and added, and to make sure the message sticks. At the diplomat's signal, the virus bloomed to its full design. Every command network went dark. Fleets drifted helpless. Factories stopped. Propaganda drones projected not imperial glory, but images of 3 small children yawning, laughing, singing nonsense songs. The galaxy watched not the empire's might, but its shame. The emperor staggered, molten eyes wide. What are you? He demanded, voice breaking. The diplomat bowed slightly, the smile never leaving his lips. Parents. The soldier added, predators. The engineer laughed, though there was no joy in it. Humans. With those words, the throne shattered, not in fire but in silence, in collapse, in the knowledge that the Empire's power was gone. The generals fled, the governors surrendered, the fleets disintegrated. The galaxy shifted on its axis. Humanity, once dismissed as curious, chaotic, provincial, now stood revealed as something far more dangerous, inevitable. The children rushed into their father's arms, clinging tight. The girl whispered, "Is it over?" The diplomat kissed her hair. For them, yes. For us, not yet. The youngest licked peanut butter from his fingers and mumbled, "Can we go home now?" The engineer ruffled his hair. "Home's a little bigger now, kiddo." The eldest looked at the soldier, eyes steady. Did they learn? The soldier's silence was answer enough. They left the throne hall not as fugitives, but as victors. Behind them, the empire crumbled, not with explosions, but with whispers, with fear, with inevitability. Entire civilizations who had once bowed to imperial law now bowed to survival. And survival meant never provoking humans again. On the bridge of their ship, as the stars unfolded, the diplomat poured tea, the soldier cleaned his rifle, the engineer tinkered with a toy he'd made from wreckage. The children curled together, finally safe. Outside, the galaxy trembled, and inside, the fathers spoke softly. "They will remember this," the diplomat said. The soldier nodded. "They will fear this." The engineer grinned. "Good. Fear makes them careful." And as the ship slipped into the void, carrying laughter and silence in equal measure, a message echoed across the stars, whispered in languages alien and human alike. Do not touch their children. Do not test their restraint. For humanity smiles kindly, speaks politely, jokes freely, until you threaten what they love. Then the mask drops and extinction follows.